कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि जी आप दूसरों के मुल्क में जाकर एक बंदा जो आपको जगह दे रहा है, रहने की जगह दे रहा है, आपको वहाँ पर जॉब के लिए अपॉर्चुनिटी प्रोवाइड कर रहा है, आपको मुकम्मल वहाँ पर तहफ़्फ़ुज़ दे रहा है, आप ये चाह रहे हैं कि आपकी मुताबिक वो ज़िंदगी गुजारे वो लोग, वो कैसे हो सकता, वो कैसे पॉसिबल
नहीं हुआ कि किसी सिविलाइजेशन के ऊपर बाहर से लोग आए जो कि हॉस्टाइल हैं उस नज़रिए के, उस सोसाइटी के ख़िलाफ़ हैं, और वो बदमाशी करते रहें, शरिया फॉर यूके करते रहें, उनकी पुलिस को मारें, गाड़ियों को आग लगाएं वगैरह वगैरह, जो इन्होंने फ्रांस में किया, जर्मनी में किया, इंग्लैंड में करते हैं। तो ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि उसके जो लोकल लोग हैं वो ना उठ खड़े हों, और वही हुआ, अब वो उठ खड़े हुए हैं। और इसमें शिद्दत इस वजह से ज़्यादा आई है कि 3 दिन पहले कियर स्टारमर ने, जो कि चुप रहा कि मैनचेस्टर में क्या हुआ, कुछ नहीं बोला, व्हाइट चैपल में बंगालियों ने क्या किया, कुछ नहीं कहा, लीड्स में जिप्सीज ने किया, कुछ नहीं बोले, तो ये तो फिर होगा। आपने उनको खुद बताया है कि जो भी दंगे करेगा हम उसके आगे हथियार डाल देंगे। मैनचेस्टर में उन्होंने, मुसलमानों ने दंगे किए, उनको गालियां दी पुलिस स्टेशन के सामने, और उन्होंने उनको चार्ज ही नहीं किया, छोड़ दिया उन 2 मुस्टंडों को। लीड्स में जिप्सियों ने गाड़ियों को आग लगा दी, उन्होंने कुछ नहीं कहा, उन्होंने दंगे किए, छोड़ दिया उनको। तो आपने खुद उनको बताया कि जब आप दंगे करेंगे तो हम आपको कुछ नहीं कहेंगे। और गोरे जो है उनको ऊपर लाठियां चढ़ती हैं। जब ये पिछले महीनों से ये प्रो हमास लोगों ने वहां पे दंगे शुरू किए हुए हैं, कोई वहां पे निकल नहीं सकता, गोरों में खौफ और हरास का आलम फैला हुआ है। तो जाहिर बात है उन्होंने उठना था। ये हो उधर अमेरिका में वो मुसलमान वहां पे अमेरिकन एक्सेंट से बोलते, कहते हैं अमेरिका का झंडा ही ना जलाओ, पूरा अमेरिका को जला दो, ये कहते हैं वो। तो लोगों ने उठना है ना, और वही हो रहा है।
Hundreds, perhaps thousands of young women have been drugged, raped and beaten across dozens of UK cities by men belonging to so-called grooming gangs.
They're gangs of men who groom young teenage girls and abuse them for sex, and end up in some cases imprisoning them and passing them around lots of other guys and lots of other people, even selling them for sex. And these girls get abused for many years.
The problem not only continues, it's getting worse. December 2020, British authorities charged 32 men in a grooming gang with 200 sexual exploitation offences against 8 girls, some as young as 13.
Arrests and prosecutions have happened around 40 different cities across the country. In 1 or 2 cities, we know there's at least 1,000 victims. So that's many thousands of victims, and many of these victims have been raped and abused by more than one abuser as well. So the scale of the problem is massive.
Most perpetrators convicted so far are reportedly Muslim. The majority of their victims are white.
My story started over 20 years ago. I was targeted in my late teens.
At the time, Ella Hill, not her real name, was living in Rotherham, north of London, when targeted by a Pakistani Muslim grooming gang and
raped, beaten, strangled, suffocated, tortured, almost drowned to death, suffocated to death, really, really brutally harmed, covered in bruises.
Hill said it was made clear to her by her attackers that because she was white, a non-Muslim, a virgin, and didn't dress modestly, that she deserved to be punished. She was reportedly raped over 100 times and endured what she says was religiously sanctioned sexual violence and torture.
People need to hear it from survivors that these are racially and religiously aggravated crimes. That when I was being beaten, I was being called a white slag, a white whore, a white that over and over again, the references to my whiteness was always at the forefront of my perpetrator's mind, and that was always linked in with religion and his idea of what a good Muslim was and a bad non-Muslim was.
She escaped a year later, becoming part of the UK's largest ever child sexual abuse investigation. More than 20 years later, these same assaults in European cities are only getting worse.
The sexual violence is increasing because of the number of immigrant men from Muslim-majority countries who are responsible for most of these, not all of them, but for most of these.
In her new book, Pray, Somali-born women's rights activist Ayan Hirsi Ali argues that immigration and Islam are major factors threatening women's safety. She documents how a surge of migrants coming to Europe from Muslim-majority countries has led to a spike in rapes, sexual harassment cases, and other violence against native white women.
There are groups of men, most of them immigrant, who engage in this behavior of catcalling, calling them whores, trying to touch them, trying to grope them. Sometimes these men act in groups and they start hunting, treating the women like prey and start assaulting them.
At the core, Ali says, is an Islamic view that European women are neither pure nor modest, are too free and therefore immoral, deserving severe punishment.
When they come to countries where women are free and go about their business as they please, these men are shell-shocked and start to behave really badly.
Tim Dieppe, with the UK's Christian Concern, says some European governments are in denial, refusing to admit the problem is partly linked to immigration and Islam.
People are afraid to tackle this, afraid to talk about it because they don't want to be called racist. And that means that we're sacrificing young girls on the altar of political correctness.
Both the Christian Democrats and other socially conservative parties, including the AfD, blamed the rising crime on immigration, noting that 41% of all suspects were people without German citizenship, despite representing only 15% of the wider population. And that the number of non-German suspects rose by nearly 18% compared to 2022, while the number of German suspects rose by only 1%.
Violent clashes. Sweden's gang wars in a series of explosions linked to a gang war.
Det här är en svår tid för Sverige. Jag kan inte nog understryka hur allvarligt läget är. Sverige har aldrig förr sett något liknande. Inget annat land i Europa ser något liknande.
Less than a decade ago, Sweden had one of the lowest levels of gun crime in Europe. Now, they're the second highest. In Stockholm, gun violence is roughly 30 times that of London. The country is engulfed in a gang war, which is almost entirely run by people with a migration background. Sweden's famed welfare state and its lax asylum laws has made it a popular destination for immigrants. Since the 2000s, they've had a steady high number of new arrivals. But in 2015, it peaked at over 160,000. Of these non-Western immigrants, nearly half are unemployed. They are also 9 times more dependent on government welfare. They live predominantly in poor suburbs and are poorly integrated in Swedish society. This is where armed gangs recruit their members.
Explosions.
Shootings, gang crime that's risen to unprecedented levels.
लेकिन दुनिया अब फ्री सोसाइटी की तरफ जा रही है, दुनिया अब आज़ाद ख्याल, रोशन ख्याली की तरफ जा रही है, जबकि हम मुसलमान आज भी उन्हीं चीज़ों के अंदर अटके हुए हैं। हम पाकिस्तान के अंदर जो पाकिस्तान बनाया गया इस्लाम के नाम पर बनाया गया, जिसके में बोला गया कि जी पाकिस्तान का मतलब क्या, ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, लेकिन आज तक पाकिस्तान के अंदर कोई भी कानून जो है वो इस्लामिक नहीं है। बात तो ये है ना कि अब ये ट्राई कर रहे हैं कि यूरोप के अंदर बैठकर कि जी हम इंग्लैंड के अंदर जो है वो इस्लामी शरिया लेकर आएंगे, हम जर्मनी के अंदर इस्लामी शरिया लेकर आएंगे, हम फ्रांस के अंदर हम एफर्ट कर रहे हैं। ये तो अपने पास जो आपका मुल्क है जिसको बनाया इस वजह से गया, कहा जाता है कि जी ये इस्लाम के नाम पर बना, तो इस्लाम के नाम पर बना तो भाई इसके अंदर इस्लामिक लॉ लेकर आए, तो लाते क्यों नहीं है? हमें रियलिटी को देखना चाहिए कि आखिर ये सिर्फ हमारे मसलक, हमारे मजहब के लोग ही ऐसा क्यों कर रहे हैं, क्यों इनके ऊपर ही पूरी दुनिया जो है वो बात कर रही है। इंग्लैंड के अंदर अभी कल ही जो है वो एक पाकिस्तानी को मैनचेस्टर एयरपोर्ट के ऊपर बेदर्दी के साथ मारा गया।
A police officer kick and stamp on a man's head. So, I know you see first of all the initial thing, the first film we saw. Just have a look here. And that was the terrible thing. Okay, so the officers was completely criticised and lambasted and everything. I'll take you over to this now. We'll see now footage that shows the run-up that has only since come out. Before we start it, let me direct you. We've got 2 men here who are not police. We'll call them Blue Top and Grey Top. The police are going to go in to arrest Blue Top. So let's just run it. We'll see what happens. As they go in to arrest him, Grey Top gets angry and starts fighting and hits one of the police quite badly. This leads Blue Top to come free. Now watch him. See, smashing the police woman there, he breaks her nose there. He's really violent, this guy. And then the taser comes out here. So watch the right of the screen, tasered now, and he's gone. And it's at this point, right at the end, you see the beginning of the last one. This is like watching Memento. So that's the kicking. So that's the lead up. Now, we see it differently, don't we, Marina?
So when I first saw the clip, not from that angle, my thoughts was, oh God, that's absolutely like, just awful, shouldn't have happened. But I knew there was going to be some additional context to it. We've now seen that. My thinking is this, right? Those people, those that we just saw attacking the police officers, punching the female officer, are clearly scum, right? They're scum. They're wrong-uns. And if there was someone else in the airport at the time or whatever that went in and just landed a blow on them, I could understand it. Where I've got a problem, right, is that I understand why the police officer probably did it, right? He's seen his colleagues get punched and whatever.
Even pointing a gun was not good enough for them. They kept going. I'm going to show you the clip. Let's show the video. Now you know why that kick, which came across as, that last kick came across as unnecessary, right? With the light blue top, it was this one. He wasn't giving up, and actually in the clip you could see in the middle of the room, I'll show you again later, the person who went down, that was a female police officer, her nose down, done. This one eventually at the end gave up, sat on the chair, on the bench. But at the end, when they realized, oh, we effed around and we are finding out now.
Whether or not we have a situation now where basically extremist mobs are running around basically dictating British democracy. Nigel Farage, for example, he's come out and said religious sectarianism is a threat, and that actually many people are basically turning a blind eye. Let's explore this. Richard, do you agree with that?
I do entirely, and I've seen it already. We saw it last night with the demonstrations outside the House of Commons. They were sort of portraying images and words onto Big Ben. That is a criminal offence.
Well, look, let's be blunt, and I'm sorry to offend anyone, but what you're referring to was the fact that some fella with a projector was projecting from the river to the sea on Big Ben.
He was breaking the law, and the police were standing there watching it, and the reason they didn't arrest him is that they're afraid. They're afraid of these people. They've been told to dumb it down and not to arrest them, even though they know they're breaking the law. And that's because of the fear that is now pervading through these demonstrations because of a lack of leadership.